Hello, people. Welcome back to Edbert Leadership. Let me start with a statement that may sound uncomfortable, even controversial. Leadership is not influence. Now, I know that goes against one of the most popular definitions out there. We've heard it said repeatedly. Leadership is the ability to influence others. I've said it myself before, and I've heard some of my mentors say it as well. It sounds clean, it sounds simple, it sounds persuasive. But let me ask you a deeper question. Is it complete? Or have we accepted a definition that is just convenient, but not entirely true? Because if we reduce leadership to influence alone, then anyone who can persuade, pressure, or position people to act is exercising leadership. And that creates, in my view, a challenging problem. Because it means manipulation can be mistaken for leadership. Popularity can be mistaken for leadership. Even control can be mistaken for leadership. And we know intuitively that cannot be right. So in this episode, permit me to stretch your thinking a bit. I agree with the work of one of my mentors, Ronald Heifetz, in his book, Leadership Without Easy Answers. And he says that leadership is more than influence. He says leadership is a capacity to mobilize people to face reality, take responsibility, and do the difficult work of change. And that is a very different kind of work. Now, let's be fair. The idea that leadership is influence has some value. It helps us to move away from the outdated belief that leadership is about position or title. It tells us leadership is not confined to hierarchy. It reminds us that leadership is relational, that it lives in the space between people. And importantly, it distinguishes leadership from mere authority. Because you can have authority and still have no influence. You can hold the title, sit at the top of the structure, and still be unable to move people meaningfully. So yes, there is something useful in that definition. But here's where the problem begins. Influence by itself, it's neutral. Influence has no moral direction of its own. It can be used to clarify reality or to distort it, empower people or manipulate them, build capacity or create dependency, move people forward or keep them comfortable. So if we define leadership simply as influence, we open the door to confusion, because by that definition, a charismatic populist stirring fear is a leader. A manipulative executive protecting their position is a leader. Even someone avoiding hard truths but keeping people comfortable is a leader. And that is where the definition breaks down. Because leadership is not just about movement. It is about meaningful movement towards growth. So we must say it clearly. Not all influence is leadership. And perhaps more importantly, not all influence deserves to be followed. Influence may get people to move, but leadership determines what they are moving towards and how honestly they engage the journey. Because it is possible to influence people without helping them grow, without telling them the truth, without developing their capacity. It is possible to influence people and still avoid leadership. And this is where many environments get stuck. Because movement is happening, but growth is not. Imagine a leader in an organization facing serious cultural issues, low trust, poor accountability, hidden conflict, conversations that never happen openly. Now, a person with influence can do one of two things. They can reassure everyone, keep things smooth, avoid tension, maintain popularity, and people will follow. Meetings will feel good. People will feel comfortable. Nothing will appear broken. You call that influence. But leadership would require something else entirely. Leadership would say, we need to confront what's not working. There are behaviors here that must change. Some of us, including me, will need to adjust. That's what leadership will say. This will be uncomfortable, but necessary. And the moment you step into that, everything shifts, because leadership often disrupts before it develops. And this is why many influential people avoid leadership, because leadership risks rejection, surfaces conflict, exposes reality, demands courage. While influence alone can preserve image, maintain control, keep people satisfied. So the question is not, can you influence people? The deeper question is, Are you willing to disturb what keeps them stuck? So what then is leadership? Let me give you a working definition that you can carry. Leadership is the practice of mobilizing people to do adaptive work, not to follow you blindly, not to agree with you always, not to depend on you endlessly, but to think, engage, take responsibility, and grow. Leadership is not about being the most persuasive voice in the room. It is about being the most responsible presence in the room. It is about asking the hardest questions, holding steady in uncertainty, regulating the level of tension, not eliminating it, creating space for learning and helping people confront what they would rather avoid. And here is the paradox many leaders must learn. If people always feel comfortable around you, you may have influence, but you may not be exercising leadership, because growth requires discomfort. And leadership is the act of introducing the right amount of discomfort at the right time for the right purpose. This is why leadership cannot be reduced to influence, because sometimes leadership requires you to lose influence in the short term so that you can create growth in the long term. Now, let me bring this closer to home. In many of our organizations, families, even communities, we reward influence. We celebrate the confident voice, the persuasive communicator, the charismatic personality, the one who can carry the room. But we must pause and ask, are we rewarding leadership or just influence? Because real leadership is often quieter. It is not always impressive in the moment. It may look like naming what others are avoiding, sitting in tension without rushing to fix, asking questions that slow people down, allowing people to struggle with the work that is theirs to own. And sometimes it looks like being misunderstood, because when you stop trying to control people through influence and start inviting them into responsibility through leadership, people may likely resist you. Not because you are wrong, but because you are asking more of them. And that is the cost of real leadership. So the next time you hear the phrase, leadership is influence, I want you to pause and expand it. Yes, leadership involves influence, but it is not limited to it. Because leadership is not about getting people to do what you want. It is about helping people face what is real so that they can become who they need to be. And you know that is harder. And that takes time. That can be slower. And often that is resisted. But that, my friend, is leadership. Thank you for listening. See you soon. Thank you.